He wore the tuxedo-like armor, the smile, the calm, the unshakable elegance. He looked like the kind of man nothing could break. But images crack. What stayed was the man underneath. Behind the most famous suit in modern cinema was someone who learned very early that life can love you in public and hurt you in private. His story isn't just about the rise. It's about the losses that shaped the man, the betrayals that remade the career, and the love that kept the pieces from scattering for good. At 72, when the world expects a quiet sunset, he's still carrying the weight, and somehow choosing grace anyway. The question is simple. How does a man built by absence, crowned by fame, and battered by grief keep getting back up? The answer starts in a small Irish town with a door that closed and never opened again. Before we begin, what's the first movie you remember seeing Pierce Brosnan in? Was it GoldenEye, Mamma Mia, something else? Drop it below. He was born in Drogheda, raised in Navan, and introduced to silence by the people who should have stayed. His father left when he was too young to remember a voice or a face. No accident, no explanation, just a disappearance that felt like a verdict. His mother, May, loved him fiercely but had to leave for London to work, promising it would be for a short time. That short time stretched into years. He moved between relatives, houses with different rhythms and rules, learning to live in the in-between. Some kids speak to be seen. He watched to survive. There was an early lesson in that life. If you don't have much, you make a promise to yourself that you'll build something no one can take. He found a sanctuary in the darkness of a theater and the glow of the screen. One afternoon, a boy sat watching Goldfinger and decided who he wanted to be. Not the orphan drifting room to room, but a man who walks into chaos and never flinches. He kept that spark. But sparks don't become fire without oxygen, and the path that found him was nothing like the one he'd planned. At 16, he crossed to London and tried to make a life with brushes and canvas. St. Martin's School of Art fed the head more than the stomach, and he lived on toast and willpower. The dream was to paint. Fate had other ideas. He wandered into a small theater workshop in the early 70s and watched a performer practice fire eating. On impulse, he asked to try. It wasn't the fire that hooked him. It was the audience's breath-catching. The stage became a training ground. Shakespeare, mime, movement, craft that leaves blisters. He went to Drama Centre London, the notoriously tough program, a crucible where endurance mattered as much as talent, and stayed when others gave up. Odd jobs paid the rent. Repetition wired the instincts. Then came the first roles. A few seconds with Elizabeth Taylor on a film set, a memorable face in The Long Good Friday, an edge on stage that made people lean forward. It wasn't a leap, it was a climb, knuckle by knuckle. And then the door that really swung open. Remington Steele. The character was written as an American charmer. He wasn't American, and charm wasn't what he sold, presence was. The show took off, audiences followed, and a new whisper hit the airwaves. He looks like the next Bond. What the numbers said out loud. At its peak, Remington Steele drew roughly 15.6 million weekly viewers and played in 80-plus countries. That wasn't a nice break. That was a global introduction with his name on it. The 80s put him in the crosshairs of a franchise that needed a new heartbeat. He met the right people. He had the look. He had the cool. He had the momentum. And then a contract clause yanked the future back. His TV series got revived just long enough to close the door again. James Bond went to someone else. Publicly, he was gracious. Privately, you don't swallow disappointment like that in one bite. So he kept moving. Spy thrillers here, prestige dramas there, even a tuxedo in a commercial that winked at the rumor without touching it. The Almost Bond label clung to him for nearly a decade. Almost can eat an actor alive. He turned it into patience. In 1994, the phone finally rang with the call he'd been trying not to want anymore. The franchise needed resurrection. The studio needed a win. He needed a chance to prove what everyone had been saying about him for years. GoldenEye landed like a defibrillator. A dead brand came back breathing. A new generation discovered 007 with a different pulse. Sleek, restrained, ruthless when necessary, human when it counted. It didn't just revive Bond, it revived the studio's confidence in the franchise. Receipts matter. GoldenEye earned roughly $353 million worldwide. His 4-film run would stack to around $1.2 billion and Die Another Day, for all of the debate, hit about $431 million, the franchise's top take at that moment. Numbers don't make a legacy, but they do mark one. He did his own heavy lifts, took the knocks, and looked like he was born for it. For millions of fans, he wasn't a replacement. He was the blueprint. A rumor that added to the myth, industry chatter has long suggested that even a fedora and bullwhip adventure was floated his way. Whether the Indiana Jones whispers were ever a real fork in the road or just Hollywood folklore, the point remains. He had options beyond Bond, and still chose to carry the tuxedo until they told him to put it back in the closet. He's never confirmed it, but the rumor persists because he fit the mold. But here's the thing about crowns. They're borrowed, and sometimes they're taken back with a phone call you never saw coming. It happened at the top, not the bottom. He was filming under a bright sky when the conversation that wasn't really a conversation arrived. "You were a great James Bond. Thank you. Goodbye." Under a minute, no reason he could respect, no conversation to shape it, just a decision, already made, presented as a courtesy. Later he learned the truth that stings more than rejection. It wasn't sudden. It was quiet. For years the replacement process had been unfolding behind him while he kept carrying the franchise's weight. You can survive many things. Secret exit plans by your own team, cut in a different place. The fallout was quick and merciless. Projects evaporated. Quotes dropped. Casting directors only saw one man, Bond, to Bond, nothing else. He let go of staff he'd kept for years. He watched a trailer for the next era of 007 and felt a part of his life drive past without looking in the rearview mirror. That's not jealousy. That's grief. Not everything we mourn wears black. Within weeks, 3 pending offers collapsed and his quote fell by more than half. He could have turned bitter. He didn't. He built a different road. But before he could rebuild professionally, life would test him somewhere far more sacred. Home. The tuxedo was gone. The role had moved on. And the private battles no camera could film stepped into the room again. Long before Bond, there was Cassandra. Elegant, quick-witted, magnetic. An actress whose presence made rooms feel warmer. She came with 2 children, Charlotte and Christopher. He stepped toward all 3 without hesitation, not as a visitor, but as a father. They married, had a son, and for a while the photographs tell the truth. A man who looked like he had finally found something he never had before, home. Then came the ache that wouldn't leave, the test results no one wanted, and the diagnosis that turned calendars into countdowns. Ovarian cancer, years of treatment, hospital corridors that smell like metal and anxiety, the kind of courage that doesn't raise its voice. He called himself the quiet partner, present, steady, honest when honesty was needed. Strength doesn't always look like speeches. Sometimes it's a hand that never lets go, even when letting go is the only ending left. The small moments that crush you. Their little boy Sean would sometimes appear in a toy doctor's coat, plastic stethoscope in hand, treating his mother with pretend medicine. It was innocent, and it was devastating, because they both knew imagination can't heal a body that's already fighting for each breath. Near the end, she whispered a final grace that stayed with him for the rest of his life. "Please, darling, don't worry. It's just a life coming to rest. Not resignation, acceptance. A parting gift from someone determined to be remembered for her strength, not her illness." She passed not long after their anniversary. He kept the family upright because someone had to. The house had to keep breathing for the children. He walked hallways at night, paused at doorways, listened to small breaths, and promised the kind of promise no one hears. "We're going to keep going." Grief doesn't pack a bag and leave. It takes a room in your life and pays no rent. And he would learn that some storms don't finish the first time. They circle back. Years later, the same illness returned like a predator retracing its path. His daughter, Charlotte, the smile that looked like her mother's, the kindness that felt like sunlight, heard the same words that had ended the life of the woman who raised her. Small symptoms, big truth, a fight both familiar and freshly unbearable. She fought with dignity, anchored by her children. She chose to live with joy in the days that remained, to show them that love can outlast fear. She even married the man who stood by her side, because for her, the ceremony wasn't just legal, it was defiant. A statement that illness would not have the last word. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Charlotte was 41. Her son Lucas was 8, the same age Sean had been when Cassandra died. Her daughter Isabella was 15, close to the age Charlotte had been when she first watched her mother get sick. Grief seemed to be repeating itself with cruel precision. When he spoke publicly about it, The room went silent. He said only, "I held the generous, strong, beautiful hand of my first wife, and just last year, my daughter." Sometimes one sentence can carry decades of pain. He didn't turn mourning into a brand. He turned it into purpose, giving time and voice to the fight against the illness that had taken so much from his family. The pain never vanished, but he refused to waste it. And yet, not every kind of loss comes with a funeral. Some are quieter, a name still saved in your phone, a love still carried in your chest, a goodbye that never gets spoken. Those losses live differently, day after day. Family isn't just blood, it's the people who build with you when the cameras stop. For years, he and producer Beau St. Clair ran their banner, Irish Dreamtime, bets on themselves, stories they wanted to tell without waiting for permission. Their banner produced the Thomas Crown Affair. It was his clean break from the Tucks, a bet on himself that paid off. Then the same relentless illness that took the women in his life came for his closest collaborator. When Beau passed, it felt like losing a lighthouse. One more repeating pattern of loss, one more reminder that grief had circled his world in ways most lives never face. He didn't let the darkness define the work they made together. He carried it forward, quietly, as a promise kept. Christopher came to him as a boy and became his son in heart and in name. They worked together, they laughed, they learned the rhythms of life on set and the quiet between projects. After Cassandra's passing, grief divided the family into different kinds of survivors. Some leaned in, some wandered out. Christopher's battles went inward. The shadows in his life only grew louder. The world has easy labels for that. He rejected them. He chose compassion. He tried help. He tried resources, patience, boundaries, every tool a parent can find. But love isn't enough to fix what someone has to choose to fix for themselves. Eventually, he did the hardest thing a father can do, step back without stepping away, love from a distance, hope without control, a door that stays unlocked, a porch light that never goes off. Years pass, hope holds, and on a quiet Father's Day, he wrote a public note that included his son's name. A small sentence to the outside world, a quiet declaration to the person who matters. I'm here. I've always been here. Even in chapters written in the dark, the sentence is the same. The love didn't leave. If distance was one kind of goodbye, love would be the answer to another. In the mid-90s, long before the tuxedo made him untouchable in public, he met a journalist who didn't care about the myth. She cared about the man. Keely saw the spaces where words didn't help and filled them with presence. She didn't try to erase grief. She made room for it, without letting it run the house. They married years later in a place older than any modern story and built a family of their own. 2 sons with their father's eyes and their mother's steadiness. The outside world did what it always does, watched, commented, judged. He refused to join in the cruelty. When tabloids aimed at her appearance, he answered with a truth that doesn't trend but lasts. I love the woman I married, for all that she is, not for what a headline demands she be. That's not a line. That's a life decision. In later years, she focused on her health, not to silence critics, but to honor her own body after seasons of motherhood and sorrow. He didn't need a transformation to believe in her. He already did. Together, they made purpose a habit. On their island home, they fought for clean water, clean soil, and protection from toxic drift. Work that became the documentary Poisoning Paradise. It wasn't vanity. It was a stand. The same steadiness that kept a marriage gentle also kept their activism relentless. In public, he's polite. In private, he's relentless about the things that matter. Birthdays marked, family dinners kept, stability guarded. Keely helped him protect that circle. If the early years were about survival, these years were about building a home where joy and pain could live side by side without canceling each other out. With a steadier anchor, he could finally turn to the work that heals when words fall short. With a safe harbor at home, he could finally choose the work that healed. When the cameras weren't calling, he picked up the brushes he'd laid down as a teenager. Color did what speeches couldn't, abstracts that looked like memory, weather, and prayer. Exhibitions followed, so did charity auctions. One of his paintings, a portrait of Bob Dylan, sold for over $1 million at Amphar. Proof that reinvention can be more than a press release. It can pay for somebody else's tomorrow. He used that visibility the right way. He served as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador since 2001, lending a name people recognize to problems the world scrolls past. He spoke at cancer telethons not as a celebrity, but as a man who knows exactly what the waiting room feels like. He backed environmental groups that protect oceans and animals because the view from his porch taught him the simplest truth: you defend what you love. He built sanctuaries, not monuments. A coastal home with morning light where coffee tastes like forgiveness. A place in Hawaii where the ocean isn't decoration, it's medicine. Walks on sand, easy meals, a garden that doesn't hurry. Rooms where laughter sits beside the empty chairs and neither apologizes to the other. He's collected honors without chasing them. An honorary OBE in 2003 and naturalized U.S. citizenship in 2004, Irish by blood, global by consequence. Professionally, he stayed selective. Some films for fun, some because the script had something to say. He stopped chasing what he had already proven and chose projects that felt like they'd be worth showing his family. That's a different kind of success. And even the life of a legend has its reminders that everything can change in one night. A fire once tore through part of his Malibu property, swallowing memories and metal in minutes, the kind of scare that makes you decide again what really matters. Another day, a small public misstep turned into a fine and headlines. No excuses, no drama, just accountability, then forward. He will always be the man who made Bond feel both dangerous and human. But the legacy isn't a car, a drink order, or a one-liner. It's the picture of someone who took every kind of hit a person can take and decided to remain kind. That is rarer than fame. So why call this a tragedy at 72? Because tragedy isn't always a single event. Sometimes it's the steady toll a life pays to keep going, and the quiet cost no headline counts. But even reinvention has moments that test what matters most. At 72, he has what money can't buy and what youth can't fake: perspective. He knows what lasts. He knows what doesn't. He tends to his health the way he tends to everything else that matters now, with discipline and gratitude. Walks, swimming, work that moves the heart more than the bank account, time with the people who stayed. He isn't pretending the past didn't happen. He's refusing to let it be the only thing that defines the future. There are absences time does not heal. They only change shape. They sit at the edge of every celebration and sometimes in the center. He doesn't hide that. He folds it into the day. Grief taught him what love is worth. Love taught him how to carry grief without letting it harden him. If there's a tragedy here, it isn't just what he lost. It's that the world almost let the pain swallow the person. It didn't. He wouldn't allow it. He kept faith, with his family, with his work, with the ordinary hours that heal the most. This is the part of the story people don't expect from a man who once wore invincibility like a second skin. The courage isn't in the stunt. It's in the softness that survived the fire. And that's why so many still care. Not because he was Bond, because he's human in a way fame usually hides, and still the spotlight finds him on his terms. He isn't a relic. He's a working artist, one who just happens to have history at his back. He stepped into a cape and helm myth as Dr. Fate, turning a comic book mentor into a man with gravity. He played with tone in streaming comedies and smaller dramas, reminding anyone paying attention that range gets better with age. The point isn't to chase yesterday. It's to enjoy today and without apology. He doesn't talk about legacy like a businessman closing a deal. He talks about it like a father, a husband, and a friend. Paintings that outlive him, causes that keep funding fights that matter, a family that knows they were always first, grandchildren who will grow up with stories about their grandmother and mother that feel like blessings, not wounds. He talks about legacy now less like a resume and more like a family tree, a canvas for the kids, causes for the world, stories for the grandchildren who will never meet the women who made him brave. He once said, in words that fit him better than any tuxedo, "Life has to go on, and if it does, you'd better find something worth living for." He found many somethings. He held on to them. He paid for them with pieces of himself and decided the price was still worth it. The world remembers the swagger and the silhouette. The people who love him remember the hand that didn't let go. And if you're still wondering what makes his story beyond heartbreaking, it's this. He faced endings again and again, and still chose beginnings. If you saw the man, not just the myth, you see why this chapter matters. It's not about a franchise, it's about a family. It's not about a number at the box office, it's about a number on a birthday cake, and the faces around it. That's where resilience lives. That's where meaning stays. Which part of his journey hit you hardest? The almosts, the betrayal, or the losses that never leave? Drop your thoughts below, and if someone you know needs a reminder that strength isn't loud, it's faithful, share this with them. The tuxedo is fiction. The courage is real. And maybe that's why at 72 the tragedy isn't that he's still standing. It's that he had to survive so much to get here.